A trick that everyone abhors in little girls is slamming doors.
A wealthy banker's little daughter who lived by Palace Green Maze waters, I name Rebecca Offendort, was taken to this furious sport. She would deliberately go and slam the door like Billy O to make her uncle Jacob start. She was not really bad at heart.
It happened that a marble bust of Abraham was standing just above the door. This little lamb had carefully prepared to slam.
And down it came, it knocked her flat,
It laid her out, she looked like that.
her funeral sermon, which was long and followed by a sacred song, mentioned her virtues, it is true, but dwelt upon her vices too, and showed the dreadful end of one who goes and slams the door for fun.
And showed the end of one who goes and slams the door for fun.
There was a boy, his name was Jim. His friends were very good to him. They gave him tea and cakes and jam and slices of delicious ham. They read him stories through and through, and even took him to the zoo. But there it was the dreadful fate befell him, which I now relate. You know, at least you ought to know, for I have often told you so, that children never are allowed to leave their nurses in a crowd. This was Jim's especial foible. He ran away when he was able, and on this inauspicious day he slipped his hand and ran away. He had not gone a yard when bang, with open jaws, a lion sprang and hungrily began to eat. The boy beginning at his feet. Now just imagine how it feels when first your toes and then your heels, and then by gradual degrees your shins and ankles, calves and knees are slowly eaten bit by bit. No wonder Jim detested it. No wonder that he shouted, "Aye!" The honest keeper heard his cry. Though very fat, he almost ran to help the little gentleman. Ponto, he cried with an angry frown. Let go, sir, down, sir, put it down.
told such awful
It made
lies.
one gasp and stretch
It
one's
made one gasp
eyes.
and stretch
Her
one's
aunt
eyes.
from her earliest
Her aunt from her earliest
youth kept a strict regard
had
for
kept
truth.
regard for truth, attempted to lead Matilda.
Effort
It
very
nearly killed her. Now once towards the close of
once
day,
towards the close
Matilda growing tired of play,
growing tired
and finding she was left alone,
she was left
went tiptoe to the telephone,
the telephone
and summoned the immediate of the London Fire Brigade.
from Parsley Hackney down the road.
With courage high and hearts above, the gallant rolling through the town.
Matilda's house is burning down.
Matilda's house is burning down. Matilda's house is burning down.
And their ladders through a score of windows on the bottom floor.
It took peculiar pains to sound some pictures up and down the house, till Matilda's line succeeded in showing them they were not needed. And even when she had to pay to get the men to go away.
It happened that a few weeks later, her aunt went off to the theatre.
To the theatre.
To see that entertaining play, the second Mrs. Tanqueray.
That night a fire did break out.
Should have heard Matilda
Should have heard
shout.
Matilda
Should have heard her
shout.
scream and
Should have heard her
shout.
scream and roar.
But every time she shouted, the people answered, so therefore when her aunt returned, Matilda and the house
The chief defect of Henry King was chewing little bits of string. At last he swallowed some, which tied itself in ugly knots inside. Physicians of the utmost fame were called at once, but when they came, they answered as they took their fees. There is no cure for his disease. Henry will very soon be dead. His parents stood about his bed, lamenting his untimely death. When Henry with his latest breath cried, "Oh, my friends, be warned by me lunch and tea are all the human frame requires. With that the wretched child expires. The nicest child I ever knew was Charles Augustus Fortescue. He never lost his hat or tore his stockings or his pinafore. In eating bread he made no crumbs. He was extremely fond of sums.
And as for finding mutton fat unappetizing, far from that, he often at his father's board would beg them of his own accord to give him, if they did not mind, the greasiest morsels they could find. His later years did not belie the promise of his infancy.
In public life he often tried to take a judgment broad and wide.
In
Private none was more than he, renowned for quiet courtesy.
he rose at once in his career,
And long before his 40th year, had wedded Phoebe, only child of Bunyan, first Lord Almafiled.
had wedded Phoebe, only child of First Lord Bunyan Almafiled.
He thus became immensely rich and built a splendid mansion.